The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus Williams pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway of Pinnacle Corporate Tower, the wheels squeaking in a rhythm that had become the soundtrack to his nights. At 42, his calloused hands told the story of a man who had worked every honest job available to keep food on the table for his 8-year-old daughter, Emma. The expensive suits that brushed past him during the day barely acknowledged his existence, but Marcus had long ago made peace with being invisible. What mattered was getting home before Emma woke up, helping her with homework, and making sure she never felt the weight of their struggles. But tonight was different. Tonight, as he approached the executive floor, he heard something that made his heart clench, the sound of a child crying. Marcus paused outside the corner office where the sobs echoed from within. Through the glass walls, he could see a small figure hunched over a massive mahogany desk, shoulders shaking with each tear. The nameplate read Jonathan Blackstone, CEO, but the man himself was nowhere to be seen. Only a little girl, maybe 10 years old, sat alone in the vast office, surrounded by the cold steel and glass that defined her father's world. Every instinct told Marcus to keep walking. This wasn't his business. He was just the night janitor, and getting involved with the CEO's family could cost him the job he desperately needed. But as Emma's face flashed in his mind, he couldn't bring himself to leave another child alone in their pain. Marcus knocked gently on the door. "Hey there, are you okay?" The girl looked up with red-rimmed eyes, clearly startled. She had the kind of polished appearance that spoke of private schools and nannies, but beneath the designer clothes was a loneliness that Marcus recognized all too well. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her voice cracked with a lie. "You know," Marcus said, setting down his cleaning supplies and stepping into the office, "my daughter Emma always tells me that fine usually means definitely not fine. Mind if I sit with you for a minute?" The girl who introduced herself as Safa hesitated before nodding. As Marcus settled into the chair across from her, she began to open up. Her father worked constantly, she explained. He missed every school play, every soccer game, every moment that mattered to her. Her mother had passed away 2 years ago, and since then, Sophie felt like she was living with a stranger who happened to share her last name. "Sometimes I act out at school," Sophie admitted, picking at the hem of her uniform. "I figured if I got in enough trouble, maybe he'd have to pay attention to me, but he just sends his assistant to deal with it." Marcus felt his heart break for this little girl who had everything money could buy but nothing that truly mattered. "You know what helped me when I was feeling lost?" he asked gently. "My grandfather taught me to play chess. He said it was like life, every move has consequences, but you always get to choose your next step." Sophie's eyes lit up with curiosity. "Could you teach me?" And so began the most unlikely friendship. 3 nights a week, when Marcus finished his cleaning duties, he would stop by Jonathan Blackstone's office to find Sophie waiting with a small chess set she'd asked her father's assistant to buy. Word spread quickly through the building about the janitor who was wasting time playing games with the CEO's daughter, and the daytime staff began to whisper and snicker whenever Marcus passed by. "Did you hear about the janitor who thinks he can tutor Mr. Blackstone's kid?" One secretary laughed to another. "As if he has anything to teach someone from that family. Poor man's probably hoping for a handout," another voice chimed in. "Maybe he figures if he gets close to the daughter, he'll get a promotion." The whispers stung, but Marcus ignored them. What mattered was the transformation he was witnessing in Sophie. She was learning patience, strategy, and most importantly, that she had value beyond her father's wealth and status. Their conversations during their games revealed a brilliant mind hungry for genuine connection and guidance. One evening, as they practiced opening moves, Sophie looked up at Marcus with serious eyes. "Why do you care about me? Everyone else just sees $signs when they look at my family." Marcus considered his words carefully. "Because every kid deserves to have someone believe in them. And because when I look at you, I don't see a CEO's daughter. I see Safa, smart, funny, kind girl who has so much to offer the world." Their chess lessons became the highlight of both their weeks. Marcus taught Sophie not just the game, but life lessons wrapped in the movement of pieces across a board. He showed her how the smallest pawn could become the most powerful piece with patience and perseverance. He explained how protecting others sometimes meant sacrificing yourself, and how every ending was also a new beginning. Meanwhile, Sophie's behavior at school began to change dramatically. Her teachers noticed she was more focused, more respectful, and showed remarkable improvement in her problem-solving skills. The child who had once been known for outbursts and defiance was now helping classmates and excelling in her studies. But Jonathan Blackstone remained oblivious to his daughter's transformation, buried as he was in mergers and acquisitions that demanded every hour of his attention. The turning point came on a cold Tuesday night in March. Marcus arrived at his usual time to find the executive floor in chaos. Security guards stood outside Blackstone's office, and through the glass walls, Marcus could see Jonathan pacing frantically while speaking into his phone. "What's happening?" Marcus asked one of the guards. "Sophie Blackstone's been kidnapped," the guard replied grimly. "Taken from her private school this afternoon. They're demanding $10 million. Marcus felt the world tilt beneath his feet. The little girl who had become like a second daughter to him was in danger, and there was nothing his minimum wage paycheck could do to help. For 3 days, Marcus barely slept. He couldn't concentrate on his work, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except Sophie's safety. He watched Jonathan Blackstone transform from a composed corporate executive into a desperate father, finally understanding what truly mattered. On the 4th day, Marcus received a phone call that changed everything. "Mr. Williams?" The voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. "It's Sophie." "Sophie, thank God. Where are you? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay," she said quietly. "I remembered what you taught me about chess, about thinking several moves ahead. I've been watching my captors, learning their patterns. There are 2 of them, and they take turns sleeping. I found an old phone they thought was broken, but I fixed it like you showed me with Emma's tablet." Marcus's heart swelled with pride even as fear gripped him. "Sophie, you need to call the police." "Not me." "I did, but they said they need more information about where I am. I can hear train sounds every 20 minutes, and there's a church bell that rings on the hour. There's also a smell like that cleaning solution you use on the marble floors." Marcus's mind raced. He knew every building in the corporate district, every sound and smell that came with his nightly routes. "Sophie, can you see anything out the window?" "There's a big red sign that says Murphy's Auto Parts and a blue building with white trim." Marcus knew exactly where she was, an abandoned office building 3 blocks from Pinnacle Tower that was scheduled for demolition. He'd cleaned it 2 years ago during a brief contract. "Sophie, I need you to stay hidden and stay quiet. Help is coming." "Okay, Mr. Marcus." Sophie's voice was small and scared. "I'm really frightened." "I know, sweetheart. But remember what we learned about the end game in chess. Sometimes you have to be brave for just a little bit longer to win. You're the strongest person I know." Marcus immediately called the police with Sophie's location. Within an hour, SWAT teams had surrounded the building and successfully rescued Sophie without any harm coming to her. The kidnappers were arrested, and the ransom money which Jonathan had been frantically trying to assemble was never needed. But the real miracle happened when Jonathan Blackstone arrived at the police station to reunite with his daughter. As he held Sophie tight, she looked up at him with tears in her eyes and said, "Daddy, I want you to meet my friend Mr. Marcus. He's the one who taught me how to be brave." For the first time in years, Jonathan Blackstone truly saw Marcus Williams not as the invisible janitor who cleaned his floors, but as the man who had saved his daughter's life by believing in her when no one else would. The next morning, Marcus arrived at work to find Jonathan waiting for him in the lobby. The CEO's usual commanding presence was replaced by humility and gratitude that seemed to emanate from his very core. "Mr. Williams," Jonathan began, his voice thick with emotion, "I owe you more than I can ever repay. Sophie told me about your chess lessons, about how you've been there for her when I wasn't. She said you taught her to think strategically, to stay calm under pressure, and to believe in herself. Those lessons saved her life." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, unused to such attention from someone of Jonathan's stature. "I just did what any decent person would do, Mr. Blackstone." "Sophie's a special kid." "That's exactly my point," Jonathan said. "You saw something in my daughter that I was too busy to notice. You gave her your time, your wisdom, your care, all without expecting anything in return. That's not something any decent person would do. That's something an extraordinary person would do." Jonathan paused, Gathering his thoughts, "I'd like to offer you a position as head of our new community outreach program. It would involve mentoring at-risk youth, developing educational programs, and yes, teaching chess. The salary would be substantial." Marcus stared at Jonathan in disbelief. "Sir, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not qualified for that kind of position. I'm just a janitor who never finished college." "You're qualified by your character," Jonathan replied firmly. "You're qualified by your compassion. You're qualified by the fact that you saw a lonely little girl and chose to care about her future. Those are qualifications that can't be taught in any university." As word spread throughout Pinnacle Tower about Marcus's new role, the same people who had mocked him for spending time with Sophie now looked at him with newfound respect. But Marcus wasn't focused on their changed attitudes. He was thinking about all the children like Sophie who needed someone to believe in them, to see their potential when others saw only problems. On his first day in his new office just 2 floors below where he used to find Sophie crying, Marcus looked out the window at the city sprawling below. Somewhere out there were kids like his Emma, like Sophie, who needed guidance and encouragement. For the first time in years, Marcus felt like he could make a real difference in the world. That evening, Sophie knocked on his office door, carrying her chess set with a bright smile on her face. "Ready for our game, Mr. Marcus?" she asked. "Always," Marcus replied, realizing that some things, the most important things, would never change. Their friendship had begun with a simple act of kindness, a janitor choosing to comfort a crying child. It had weathered mockery and doubt, grown through trust and shared wisdom, and ultimately blossomed into something that changed both their lives forever. In a world that often seemed to measure worth by wealth and status, Marcus Williams had proven that the greatest riches come from the connections we make and the love we choose to share. And in the game of life, that made him the winner every single time.